Okay, my name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the executive director for Veterans Memorial and Multicultural Histories Incorporated. And today is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. And this is a Zoom recording. Sir, what is your name?
Jimmie T. Smith, Jimmie, middle initial T, Smith.
Okay, and this is an interview for the Veterans History Project, which is located at the American Life Center at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And Mr. Smith, how old are you?
I'm 56 years old.
Okay, when's your birthday?
October 12th.
Okay. And what city do you live in?
I currently reside in Dunellen, Florida.
Where is that?
Dunellen, Florida, which is in Citrus County, which is north of Tampa by about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to be over on that side before Christmas, I think, doing some more interviews, but nice. My pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
Okay. What branch of the service did you go into?
The United States Army.
Okay. And what year was that?
1983, February of 1983.
Okay. And what were you doing prior to the service? What were you doing at that time? Were you in high school or?
I was just a high school student. I joined the Army straight out of high school. I literally left high school that day and walked over and officially joined the Army.
Nice. Why did you choose that branch of the service?
Well, I'd always joined or signed up with the goal of being in the Army from John Wayne movies, Audie Murphy, Vic Moreau, Rat Patrol, and just a lot of stuff that I saw as a kid and people I talked to.
Nice, nice. So please forgive me, but what state were you in at that moment?
I was living right here in Citrus County, Florida.
Gotcha. So where did you enter into the service?
Again, in Florida, and recruited the recruiting station in Inverness, Florida, and then subsequently the MEP station in Jacksonville.
Okay. So where was basic training?
Basic training was at Fort Benning, Georgia. Basic training and airborne school.
Oh, okay. So you were a paratrooper?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I knew that because of some guys I grew up with before I ever went into the service that went to Vietnam. Airborne. I heard airborne. I know what airborne is. Okay. So how long was basic?
Basic and AIT, I believe at that time was 13 weeks.
Oh, so combined, it was just over 2 months.
Yes, sir. And that's because my specialty was the infantry. So in that, the timeline is not as long as some others like communications or such. Okay.
So tell me about basic training. What were the instructors like?
Well, one instructor in particular was Sergeant Roach, who was my full-time drill sergeant. Sergeant Nelson was there periodically. He was going to some other schools at the same time. But Sergeant Roach was a very large man with a very deep voice and very much the look of the traditional large, mean drill sergeant. But he was actually a very compassionate man and very matter of fact, succinct, not one to scream and holler. So it was a pleasure actually to be in basic training and not have somebody screaming down at you every single moment. It was more about learning what you need to learn.
Good news. Okay, so that was basic. Any casualties in basic training? Did anybody get hurt? Did you get hurt?
Well, I didn't get hurt. No, there were people that got hurt, but nothing major, nothing that forced anybody out. Usually the only reason they got out or recycled was because of training, failing in training or something like that. We were very blessed.
Gotcha. Okay, so now on to AIT. So what was the length of time that you were in paratrooper school?
So when I went to airborne school, I actually, in a very unique way, I didn't volunteer for airborne school. I'm a very talkative individual. And due to that, I was standing in line with my friend talking to him. as he slowly and progressively moved up in line, so did I. Eventually, we get to the head of the table, and the drill sergeants, of course, look at us and say, "All right, come on, guys." So I step up to the table because the drill sergeant told me to step up to the table. He filled out my paperwork. I answered all the questions, and he handed me a packet, told me what my class date was. I walked off and looked at my friend and said, "What's this for?" He says, "Airborne school." I said, "Great. What's that?" So I'd never really actually volunteered for Airborne school. Kind of talked my way into it.
Okay. All right. And what was the length of time? Was it 6 weeks or 8 weeks?
Normally it's just 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Okay.
Yep. Normally it's just 4 weeks. And I just, hold on a second. For some reason, my battery's not charging and it's now running low. Oh my God. I had this thing on. Bear with me, sir.
Not a problem. I'm going to pause it.
Okay, please do.
Yep.
I do not know why it's not to it.
Okay. All right. So were there any casualties in Airborne school?
All right. So I actually and the Airborne school is 4 weeks, and in that I ended up having to be recycled several times. And what it actually ended up being was, well, for lack of a better way to put it, malnourishment. So when you go to Airborne school, they rush you through everything. So they would literally sit you down for a meal, tell you you're done, and get up before you could start eating it. So I never really truly ate all the meals I was supposed to eat. And by the time I got to jump week, we ran down to the plains, stand in formation, and all of a sudden I passed out. And the doctor was like, "Well, it's from lack of nourishment. You're basically malnourished." So I was definitely a casualty for that.
Okay. So how long did you wind up in a sick bay, sick leave?
It just basically put me on for another week, and then I was given a little bit of time to build my strength back up and finish my last week and be done with it.
Okay. Did you say that you recycled several times?
Yes, sir. So I was
Same thing each time?
no, sir. So I was a very little person, and when I got in there, I was 125 pounds, and I failed ground week, very bad exits out the door, twice, but they let me stay, and they encouraged me to keep trying, and I did. And then, like I said, I failed jump week the first time because I passed out from lack of nourishment. So I was a Delta Golf Juliet and then my number. And that's how they determine what your status was with previous weeks. So I had failed ground week twice, passed tower week, and then failed jump week once.
Okay. All
So I
right.
was
So
much more than I should have been.
you finally got through that. So at the end of that 13-week period, did you go forward to your first duty base, your next duty base actually, or did you go home on break or take leave?
I did take a little leave, and nothing special. Just came, hung out with family, and got to see some relatives I hadn't seen before, and walk around with a little extra swagger being a paratrooper.
Gotcha. All right. So where was your next duty station?
So I was first permanently stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington with the 9th Infantry Division, and the specific unit was the 2nd of the 2nd Infantry Regiment. At Fort Lewis at that time, they were going through a lot of experimentation with where the new army was going to go. So this is 1983, and they had, some units had dune buggies, some units had pickup trucks, and they were just trying all kinds of different modernization of the army at that time. I was in a light infantry unit, and so we walked everywhere we went, and it was a pretty interesting time to see the army changing and start implementing new tactics, techniques, and procedures.
Okay. You said Washington. Is that Washington State or Washington, D.C.?
Washington State, Fort Lewis, Washington State. Yes.
And how long was that tour?
I stayed there for 18 months. And from the age of 17 to the age of 18, I was there, and we did a lot of desert training in Fort Irwin, California. We went to Hunter Liggett in California. We went to Japan on a 30-day rotation to do training with the Japanese Army. So it was a very active time. We spent basically 9 months out of the 18 months in the field.
How was the food?
Well, actually, we went from C rations to MREs during that time frame. The Army was literally updating so many different things. We still had Jeeps and steel pots and things like that. But when I first got there, we had C rations. And then towards the end of my tour at Fort Lewis, Washington, we started to get these MRE bags. And we thought that was so much nicer than carrying around a can of the canned meals instead.
Up until this point, do you feel like you had everything that you need as far as supplies was concerned through basic and through this 18-month, I apologize, tour?
Yeah, so for me, I really, I admit to being unaware of what was really needed. I was just gung-ho and just wanted to go out and train and fight and do all these things. But it was also the years of the Reagan Army where a lot of money and effort was being put into growing the Army and expanding our capabilities.
Okay, so were there any casualties while you were up in Washington State? Anybody get hurt?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Where was your next duty station?
My next duty station was at was in Korea at the 2nd Infantry Division, 1st and 9th Infantry Battalion, and that was up on the DMZ, demilitarized zone, right next to the JSA, Joint Security Area, which are the ones who control access at the checkpoint between North and South Korea. And we are within 1,000 meters of the north-south demarcation line.
How long was that tour?
That was it was only supposed to be 1 year, but I ended up being there for 16 months by happenstance. And I got to do 2 rotations or 2 month-long patrols where we would go out and patrol along the North and South Korean border.
And so tell me a couple of the most memorable incidences that you experienced while you were there.
Well, probably the most incredible experience I had was when patrolling. We had people following us, the North Koreans, and they would use flashlights and communicate with other North Koreans in the same area with flashlights as we would patrol trying to find them. And we called them Singing Sam. That was the acronyms for them. And we called them Singing Sam. And it was a very disconcerting experience to have somebody following you that you couldn't find when your whole point was to be out there to find them. Another experience of training behind the lines in the regular training areas. North Korea and South Korea had been at war for all that time. In those areas, they had laid out many minefields. And one day we were out doing training in what we thought was a secure area. And as we walked through this wooded area, come up on this rusty old sign that's along some barbed wire, and start to go over it and look at it. And on the other side of it was a freshly painted sign. So on the back side was rusted out triangle, and on the front side was a freshly painted triangle, the same one, and it said mines, which meant we were in a minefield at that time.
Oh my
So
God.
those are 2 of the most unique experiences I've had in my life, is to be chasing after somebody who's actually chasing after you in Korea, and then be standing in a minefield when you realize and look back and have to tell everybody you're in a minefield.
Wow. How did you know they were following you?
You could watch them with the flashlights.
Got it. Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure. Okay, and so again, I apologize. How long was this tour in Korea?
This tour was supposed to be 1 year, but it ended up being 16 months.
Okay, was there any combat involved?
No. If it would have been an international incident. We were very fortunate for that. About the only time there was ever any danger was there was almost a force on force incident, or a blue force on blue force incident, meaning a friendly fire incident. Fortunately, it was recognized quickly, and nobody was engaged.
Okay, and please forgive me, but I see on here you said you went into service in February 1983.
Yes, sir.
When did you get out?
I got out in March of 1983. I think it's March or May. Darn it, off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think March.
No, but something's wrong here. What year did you go in?
Or 2003. Sorry, 2003. So yes, I got out in 2003. 20 years.
Okay,
20
I got
years,
it.
15 days.
I fixed it. All right, cool. All right. So what was your next? No casualties. By the grace of God, you had that harrowing experience of being shadowed by the enemy. Where did you get to travel while you were in Korea, by the way? Anywhere else you traveled in Asia while you were there?
So no, but I did get to go to an island called Jeju, beautiful island, and I was able to go to their rappelling school, and that's when I first learned anything about rappelling was in Korea at the Jeju rappelling school, and we rappelled down a 300-meter cliff, which was not only very interesting, but probably just such an incredibly beautiful sight to sit there and look over the majority of the island from that peak.
Gotcha. Did you pass through Hawaii?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. All right. So, what was your next duty station?
So
Oh, wait a
from
minute,
there,
wait. Two more things. How was the food in Korea, and did you interact with the people on the economy?
yes, I did. It was we had the Korean soldiers that were integrated in the units, were Korean augmentations to United States Army, or KATUSAs, as the acronym was called. And so we regularly had a KATUSA with us the entire time. On our post, we had a very small post because we were so far north. It was literally a company, and we are very limited on our ability to go off post because you had to go across the Injin River, which was like a military failsafe to prevent North Korean invasion. But we got passes back in those days. You weren't just off at the end of the day and went into town. You literally had to get a pass, which was approved by your NCO and officer, and then you got to go and stay overnight in certain areas, but you couldn't be out after a certain time. They had curfew, so you'd have to go to a club, and we'd go to clubs and stay overnight and then come back the next morning. But it was never really able to go out and just meet and hang out with the people in Korea.
Okay. And so how was the food?
Oh, the food. Well, so I have to tell you, the one food I really liked was what they call pot stickers now in the United States. There it's called yaki. All right, yakimendu is what they would make for us, and they're small little dumplings. My mouth's watering just thinking about it. It is one of my favorite foods still today.
Okay.
And anytime I go anything Asian, it's definitely got to be that on the plate. And the reality is, it's probably nothing special. It's more memory than everything. But I eat those things pretty much every night because we had our own KATUSA snack bar that would deliver it over to the barracks. So we'd hang out in our rooms and drink Pepsi, moon pie, eat moon pies, and have yakimendu.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So where was your next duty station?
From there, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
And
And by the way, did you have any problem staying in touch with your family and back home at any point so far?
no. Although we're not one to communicate a lot, so that
Right.
really wasn't part of the challenge. Plus, back then they had what was called the Mars system, which is what's it called? It's the radio system, like the civilian radio system where they use in the emergencies now today.
Right.
So, they were able to send messages back if you want to do it. We could also call from there, but very expensive at that time. So basically it was just a standard letters.
Okay. Okay. So you went to Fort Benning, Georgia?
From there, I went back to Fort Benning, Georgia, and they had at that time a mechanized brigade, the 197th Mechanized Infantry Brigade. And so for my first time ever, I got on a tracked vehicle. And when I say that, got deployed on tracked vehicles and learned how the mechanized infantry deploys.
And how long were you there?
I was there probably about another 18 months. That tended to be the pattern for the beginning of my career.
Right.
So yeah, I was there 18 months and learned how to. We deployed to Fort Irwin and other areas, and of course all throughout Columbus or Fort Benning, Georgia, doing training with tanks and how to deploy in the light or in the mechanized, contrary to light fighter experience.
Okay. Anybody get hurt while over that year and a half period?
No. There were some times where people in other units got hurt, but nobody in my unit. I've been very blessed in that aspect of, although there are some other units that I served in where people did. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But the reality is, no, the mechanized unit at that point wasn't doing a lot of things to get themselves hurt. It was just basic deploy out of the vehicle, load the vehicle, maneuver to another spot. We did have some places where somebody could have gotten hurt. We had incidents where people literally drove the 113 armored personnel carrier off small cliffs, no more than maybe 8-10 feet. Had a couple people that maybe bust up some ribs or something, but not hurt to the point of tragedy.
Right. Gotcha. So at this point, by the way, what rank were you when you finally separated from the service?
Staff Sergeant, E6.
Staff Sergeant. E6?
Yes, sir.
Oh, congratulations. Good. So deployments. Oh, did you travel around on leave while you were in Georgia?
No, actually, I live in Florida, so I just spent most of my time coming back to visit family because having served in Korea, I had not been around much.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time there, but I did go up to New York, Liberty, New York, because I had friends who were serving with me, and we would actually take and go and visit each other's families, both in Liberty, New York, and here in Citrus County, Florida.
Gotcha. Okay, so where was your next duty station?
From there, I was next assigned to the 193rd Infantry Brigade in Panama, where I was with the 1st of 508th Airborne. So
how many people were in your unit there?
It was an entire battalion.
How large?
A battalion is 4 companies and a headquarters company. So I think it's about 750 people or something like that.
Gotcha, about 800. Gotcha. Go ahead.
Right.
So what did that consist of? How long were you there?
Well, I was there for 2 years, and it was at that time during the years of Noriega. So I had a lot of interesting interactions in the civilian sector. I did get out in the civilian sector there. They didn't have passes and stuff like we did in Korea. You could just literally go get off work and go into town or go into the city or wherever. So a lot of us did. And that's where I met my first wife, and subsequently got married and dealt with a lot of the issues with the dictator that Noriega was and the forces under him.
What kind of issues?
Well, you would see not riots, you'd see protests, and then you'd see the PDF, Panamanian Defense Force, come down and literally just start beating people.
Wow.
At that time, there was also the incident where the election happened, and the appropriately elected individuals were basically beaten, and Noriega threw out the election results and said that his person won, and that subsequently led months later into Operation Just Cause, which is I actually left just prior to that, but which is when the United States came in and took Noriega out of power from Panama.
Okay. What year was that?
That was from 87 to 89. Okay. And it was a very interesting time to, we were constantly on alerts. We constantly being deployed. We had a lot of experiences in trying to live in a country that their leadership didn't like us. And so it was a very interesting time to be in a country where you literally saw the signs on the wall, painting on the wall, Yankee, go home.
Right. Wow. And you said deployed. Where were you deployed to?
Well, then just various places around Panama.
Oh.
We got deployed to Arahan Tank Farm to basically repel some suspected infiltrators and different things like that.
Okay. Okay. So casualties, anybody get hurt? Any tragedies over that 2-year period?
Yes.
From the battalion, from your group?
Yeah, there were people who got hurt, but again, the people that got hurt from my unit were actually after I left during the time of Just Cause. One of my roommates, Du Bois, was sadly killed in the Comandancia, which is Noriega's headquarters. And, you know, it's still one of those things that I think about all the time. And a young man named Coase was killed alongside of him. And Coase wasn't a roommate, but he's a young man I had talked to prior to my leaving Panama and being reassigned stateside, who I talked to and who was just very extremely nervous about what was going to happen. And sadly, the worst possible example, what we did talk about, is exactly what happened to him, and he died in battle.
Wow. Sorry about that. Okay. Any more, just, you know, any more incidences similar to that, or was that it?
No, fortunately, that was the majority of things
Good.
that happened.
Good. So you were not yourself in combat while you were there at all?
That is correct. The most I was held at gunpoint.
Held at gunpoint?
Yeah, they had what was called the Dignity Battalion. The Dignity Battalion was like their militia. And I had just got married, coming back from my honeymoon. The elections went south, all kinds of crazies going on. I try and get on the bus, and these 2 vehicles come rolling up, and it's me, my brand new bride, and my brand new brother-in-law. And these people want to know why I'm there and what I'm doing. I'm just waiting for the bus to go back to base. And they start arguing back and forth amongst each other. But at that time, you know, you had 2 vehicles of individuals jump out, and they're basically pointing their guns at us, trying to figure out why this gringo, as the term was used, was there in Chirera, Panama.
Wow. What was it? Was it 5 minutes or 30 minutes? What was the time frame that you would sit standing there having that experience?
Well, I couldn't tell you the exact time frame, but let me just tell you, when that's going on, time moves very slowly. And then
Seems like an eternity. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then we went back to my in-laws' house, and then next day they smuggled me back on base by driving me through the roadblocks and checkpoints and everything with stuff piled up on top of me. My then wife's father was actually the lieutenant who was second in charge of that district for the Panamanian military. So they smuggled me back through in his car, and everybody knew his car, and they just told him that they were bringing him stuff. Well, they weren't. They were basically just smuggling me through the roadblocks.
Gotcha. Anything else interesting that stands out in your memory bank from that tour?
Oh, so
besides all that excitement just now?
So many things, but some of those things is probably not appropriate to put on here.
Okay. All right. So where was your next tour of duty?
From there, I went to the 101st. I was with the 2nd of 327, no slack, as the battalion was called, and it was an air assault unit. And from there, we went to Desert Storm. So got to do lots of training, lots of good stuff. But then when Saddam Hussein did what he did in invading Kuwait, they were worried about the potential for him to come into Saudi Arabia and get the oil. So they sent many units, one of which eventually was the 101st Airborne, and we deployed.
What year was that?
It was 1990, and subsequently, I believe the Gulf War kicked off in 91, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Okay. And how long were you, where were you, in Kuwait?
No. We landed in Saudi Arabia. I never got to Kuwait.
Okay.
It was Saddam Hussein who invaded Kuwait that kicked off the operations that were eventually called Desert Storm and Desert Shield.
Gotcha. And how long was that tour?
That was 9 months, being in Saudi Arabia and Iraq combined, and I was a month total, I think, in Iraq. But so total combined as part of that deployment for approximately 9 months.
And what was your job there?
I was a team leader at that time. So, you know,
How many men did you have under your command?
I just had 3.
Okay. And so what was your job? What'd you do?
Basic regular infantry job. We actually only had a couple unique experiences over there. One of which was when we were forward deployed, because they would rotate us out. When we were forward deployed, we had some Iraqis who decided that they were going to lob mortars at us from the back of a, I guess, Toyota Land Cruiser, or not Land Cruiser, but pickup truck. And subsequently, the gazelles from the French army who were stationed next to popped up, went out there and smoked them. And then when we went to check out the, like days later, when we went out to check out a border crossing between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, we took it over, and I was the one who was able to, or was assigned to stand on top of it and keep lookout in case somebody came our way. So I was on top of it as they're pulling the gear out of it. I'm up top with binoculars looking out for the enemy, who never did show.
Okay. Wow. Any casualties?
Yes, actually. So while in the cantonment area, somebody from the tent next to me decided to go through the procedures with a live AT-4 anti-tank weapon, in which they then launched it into the tent that was behind me. So if you think a checkerboard pattern here, from next to me, catty corner into the tent behind me, and it hit a radio and other gear and sprayed that metal into the people around it. I think 6 or 7 individuals were wounded in that incident.
So that was friendly fire.
Sadly, yes, sir.
Unfortunate. So, okay, well, besides that incident, for the remainder, anything, go ahead.
No, the only thing is, we deployed, subsequent to that, we deployed forward, and we eventually went into Iraq full time when the invasion kicked off. Was called a forward area rearming refueling point. So we basically were there securing the fuel and the ammunition stuff, so other aircraft could come forward and launch out to other attacks, or come back from those attacks and rearm and refuel to go out and attack again.
Gotcha. Okay, so at the end of that tour, where were you preparing to go next duty station?
Well, I went back down to Panama. And there was no Noriega. There's still high stress. There's still a lot of things going on, but went back down to Panama.
Right.
Loved it. Spent 4 years down there, and nothing of any note happened there. I was able to be with the unit deployed to Honduras twice, and that was definitely a very interesting time to go into an area. One of the cantonment areas we went to was actually an old nunnery. And I didn't even know that where nuns went to school were actually called nunneries, but they were old nunnery, and we got to do training with some of them. And then I also got to go to Belize, and in that, the Belize soldiers were Belize was a former British colony.
Who did you train with at the nunnery?
We just taught the Honduran soldiers how to do basic infantry tactics.
Okay.
And they were not very good at our tactics, because they were more into the guerrilla warfare tactics. So it was definitely interesting to try and teach somebody who doesn't do this, or doesn't do what we did full time, to do it up to our level. But it was definitely a wonderful deployment, I got to go into the community with their people and eat some of their food and drink some of their drink and had a good time with them.
Good, good. How long were you there?
I think that was just like a month-long
Oh,
deployment.
you said, well, okay, this tour was total of 4 years, but you were only there for, yeah, a couple of months, 4 months.
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
same thing when we went to Belize, it was the same thing. We went there, trained. When I was in Belize, got to go to the Mayan ruins. And I had to tell you, both times we went to the Mayan ruins.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
That's all right. No, that's all right. Both times we went to the Mayan ruins, and it was in Honduras, it was Copan, and it was the Mayan ruins are beautiful, very detailed. And we walked around, we checked it out. And then the second time we deployed was in Belize, was we got to go to see their Mayan ruins, and they weren't so detailed. They looked a little more older and weathered, but we literally were able to go to the very top of the Mayan pyramid and sit on top of the Mayan pyramid
Wow.
and overlook both Belize and all the way into Guatemala. And that's, that's not something everybody can say they did. So yeah, it was definitely a very interesting time.
Okay, good. Excellent. So this was a peaceful tour. You also got to spend time with your wife. I guess when you were in the Middle East, when you were in Saudi Arabia, she was still back home.
Yes, sir.
So you got to spend time with her, right?
Yes, sir. I had the classic welcome home, run up and hug each other kind of moment when I came back from that. As a matter of fact, we came into the building and they told us to enter the building and go past they had like a roped off area where the spouses were right behind that. The wives were right behind that. So you enter the door, the wives are right behind this rope, and then you're supposed to go around behind the group and then meet up with your spouse then. My wife was literally right there at the door. I had not seen her for 9 months, so I pulled her under the rope because they never said that they couldn't come with us. So I pulled her under the rope and carried her around to the back while everybody else was waiting with their wife. And they're like, "Can you do that?" I was like, "Nobody said we couldn't." So I had that unique experience.
That's good. Okay, so this 4 years, where'd we go next?
So from there, she joined my wife, my first wife, joined the Air Force and was stationed at Pope. So I end up going to Fort Bragg because Bragg and Pope are units that are right next to each other on the bases touch each other. And of course you jump from the airplanes at Bragg and the airplanes are at Pope. So we both got stationed at that location.
Nice, nice. Okay, and how long were you at Fort Bragg?
I was at Fort Bragg for 4 years. And
Okay.
I was with the 3rd of the 505 for a short time with the 82nd Replacement Detachment, where I helped in process new troops. And then with the 2nd of the 504, where I was a weapons squad leader. So yeah, I spent some very good time at Bragg and really enjoyed a lot of great training and jumping. And something about being part of the mighty 82nd Airborne Division is just, of all the places I've been, whenever somebody speaks, matter of fact, you can see in the background my airborne flag. That is always predominantly what I talk to people about.
I understand. Believe me, I understand. Okay, so did you deploy any place or travel anywhere over the 4-year period that you were at Fort Bragg?
No, pretty much all of the time we did any kind of training was there. Well, with the exception of we actually came down to Camp Blanding, Florida, and we jumped into Camp Blanding, and I had a very bad jump, and I flipped coming out of the aircraft because I hit the lead edge of the door, and then subsequently was coming down head first. So I had to look past my feet to look at my parachute as a way to make sure it opened, but you're not supposed to land on your head when you're coming down on a parachute. But fortunately, at the very last second, I kicked and moved in the right way, swung down and around. As soon as I swung down and around, I lowered my rucksack. As soon as I pulled the release to lower my rucksack, the rucksack hit the ground, and so did I.
And were you injured?
No, sir, I was not. No, I was very blessed that I was not. We did other training, and there were people in my unit that did get hurt. One of them got hurt doing training with a grenade, threw the grenade into the bunker, and it bounced out, and sadly 4 people got wounded from fragmentation from a grenade. But instead of lobbing it in like they were supposed to, the individual threw it very hard. And when they did, it bounced back, and they got wounded for it. Fortunately, nobody died. Very happy to know that, but 4 individuals permanently wounded, and from fragmentation from a hand grenade.
Wow. Okay. So where was your next duty station?
From there, I went back to Korea. Okay, my last overseas tour. And
For how long?
12 months.
For what?
12 months.
Okay.
So that was from 2000 to 2001, and 2001 to 2002. And we helped set up what was called the Air Assault School. So the commanding general wanted to bring over a training school, and they're called, they're mobile training teams where they can come over and train your troops to do certain skills. And he wanted to make sure we were qualified in air assault. Well, having been with the 101st, and then also having been being a rappel master, they decided to call on all the rappel masters and those who are air assault qualified to set up our own school. And we did. We came together under the general's leadership. We put together an air assault school. We got certified as instructors in the air assault school. And then subsequently, we ran an air assault school just for our division for a very short time, got the number of people qualified that they wanted to, and then closed down the school.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And this is back in Korea, right?
Yes, sir. And this
Okay.
is during the, this is shortly thereafter, of course, what happened was the attacks on 9/11. And being in Korea, I was out in the field, and they attacked the United States in the morning,
Right.
which was late at night in Korea.
Oh, wow.
So we're out in the field. It's late at night. Somebody comes running in to tell me, hey, guess what just happened? They attacked the towers. And the individual said, you want me to wake everybody up? And I was like, no, just let them sleep. It's going to be, they're going to need it. And sure enough, that was what eventually has kicked off into the endless wars that you're seeing out now. And thankfully, we just recently closed the chapter, which is the war in Afghanistan.
Great. Gotcha. Okay. Did you travel outside of Korea this time when you were deployed, when you were stationed there this time? Did you get to see any other parts of Asia? Same?
No, sir. Once, especially once 9/11 happened, nobody was going anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, we pretty much locked down. But I did, of course, get to chew the ground in Korea plenty. And at that point, it was a different Korea. You didn't have to ask for a pass to leave base. You could just literally go off base. It was awesome. So I did get to enjoy a little bit more of the local culture. Went into Seoul, took a taxi to a couple stores, and did a couple different things. It was interesting to see in the 16-year difference the huge amount of change that a culture could take on, and Korea was just nothing like during my first tour.
Gotcha. Was that your last? Did you separate after Korea?
I went back to Fort Benning, Georgia, where I started for 8
Right.
months. And I basically retired out of there because with just 8 months left, there wasn't really a good unit for them to send me down to, and went down and ended up being an administrative individual who helped work on what's called NCERs, which is the non-commissioned officers evaluation reports. They would pass it through us, and we would pass it up the chain.
Okay. So that was you spent how many? Okay, so when you went back to Georgia, how many months did you have left before you actually separated?
When I got back to Georgia, I had 8 months. And
Okay. All right. And now you're a Staff Sergeant E6.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you separated, and what did you plan to do when you separated?
I literally had in mind to do very little to nothing and live a nice, quiet life with just a decent job. And that did not work out well.
So tell me what happened after the service.
So I got a couple different jobs, like I had hoped, and was progressing nicely. But at one point, I had started getting involved in local politics. And matter of fact, almost right away, I got involved in local politics. I thought it was kind of almost the same duty and responsibility to be outspoken about things. And I ran for the office, the state house office locally. So we have our district at the time was District 43 for the Florida State House. And I beat a 25-year incumbent, something that had not been done in 20 years because it was an incumbent of the same party. And so I did that and ended up becoming the a legislator in the Florida House.
Okay, all right. And how long were you a state legislator?
For 6 years, with the peak position of being the chairman of the Veterans and Military Affairs Subcommittee. And that meant that I was on the House side leading the discussion of actions that the Florida House or the state of Florida as a whole was going to take in reference to veterans, working closely with the Senate chair as well as with Senator Rick Scott, which was then Governor Rick Scott.
And so was that what state were you the state legislator in?
Florida.
Oh, okay, all right. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Okay, and how long did that last?
For 6 years. And
okay,
then I came home and was became a county commissioner for 4 years.
Where?
Here in Citrus County, Florida.
Okay. And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I became a county commissioner for 4 years in Citrus County, Florida, and that was a blessing. I did lose my re-election attempt for that, and now I'm working with the Concerned Veterans for America.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So a few more questions.
Yes,
overall, over the period, well, you said 20 years, right?
20 years and 16 days. Yes, sir.
Basically, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
20 years and 16 days.
Okay. But who's counting? But overall, how did you get along with enlisted and officers?
So it took me a long time actually to get promoted because I'm very strong-willed. I guess it would be a polite way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like bad leaders. So fundamentally, I had some challenges. I got along great with the lower enlisted, especially good with the NCOs. I struggled at time with certain officers, not all,
Right.
but certain. And part of the reason I struggled sometimes was I would be very upfront about what I felt about something. Or as an example, when I was at Fort Bragg and we jumped in the camp landing, we got up to do a maneuver and they told us we're going to go 90 degrees in the morning. Well, 90 degrees is east. So we get up, we start walking, and I realize there's something warm on my back. It's called the sun. Well, obviously 90 degrees in the morning should have sun in your face and not on your back. So I got on the radio and I called out the entire company and said, hey, stop, look at your map. We're going the wrong way. Somebody needs to figure out east from west. I guess sarcasm was probably not a good tool to use at that time. But the reality is that everybody stopped. And then when they said, okay, they came over the radio and said, okay, we're going to turn around. So all of a sudden the unit starts moving again. Now imagine this, if you will. Okay. The unit is moving towards what is the established head of the unit. So I told my squad, at that time squad, I told my squad, just stay here. And everybody starts to leave us. So the squad behind decides they're going to move. They go, you need to keep going. I go, no, we're going to stay right here. And he goes, they start walking off. He goes, well, you need to really start moving. I go, listen, I'll see you in a minute. Because everybody would walk up to the front, turn around, and was walking right back. Instead of just peeling back into ourselves and turning around,
Right.
For some reason, everybody want to walk to the head of the snake and turn around instead of just simply reverting and going the other way. We're going that way. Why would I want to go this way? to go back that way.
Just
It
doing
was
about face, right? Just doing about face.
about face or just revert back through the channels, you
Gotcha.
know,
Yep.
but they didn't. So my leadership didn't always appreciate that that mentality, but I can tell you the men who didn't have to walk someplace to get back to where they were greatly did.
Okay. All right. Just a few more questions.
Yes, sir.
I think I said that already. Forgive me for being repetitive.
That's all right.
Did you use your GI Bill for anything?
Actually, so when I first joined, it was called the VEAP, Veterans Education Assistance Program. And they matched a certain dollar amount that you put in. Sadly, just prior to me getting out of the military, when I was still at Benning, I re-enlisted for my last bit. They screwed up my paperwork and they cashed out my VEAP. And they said they sent it to me. Well, it never got to my bank. So still to this day, there's an assumption that the United States Army paid me my education money and my leave money. And then but I showed them the bank never got it. The bank gave a letter saying they never got it. So my education money basically went.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's government.
I understand. Have you maintained any relationships, friendships with your peers?
Absolutely. I talked to, matter of fact, it's probably some of the most joy I get in the civilian sector is still being able to connect with some of my military friends. And there's a group of us, specifically those who I served with my my second tour in Panama, who I was their squad leader. We're like brothers. We constantly are communicating with each other, be it a joke, razzing on each other, telling a story that we know everybody knows, but you're like, well, why would you tell that story? We are always having fun with each other.
Good. Okay. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, when I was 17 and first joined, I thought, well, my whole job is to, run around and kill the bad guys and let's go America, go everywhere and kill bad guys. And as I got older and more aware, and I started to realize that's not the job of the military. And the more I read and became more educated about the founding fathers, I realized that when we swear allegiance to defend the Constitution, it's not to run around the world. So I eventually grew out of the mindset of the young, which many young still have, where they want to be John J. Rambo or whoever, and grew into a more thoughtful leader, in which it was like, well, when 9/11 did come and people were like, well, we should just nuke them and we'll turn it all into a parking lot. One comment that was common there during that time frame because of everybody's angst and anger. And I looked at one young gentleman, I said, yeah, what about the innocent women and children and elderly and stuff like that have nothing to do with any of this, that don't even know that we exist? And it just stopped him and he looked at me and I go, not everybody's our enemy.
There you go. And last question. How did your service and experiences affect your life?
When I came out of the military, it's almost like having served in the military, people have this automatic assumption of you in a positive way. It's almost like a blank check to success. And it really is sometimes actually difficult to see that because people assume that you know what you're doing, that you're skilled and capable leading. Give them a job and they'll get anything done. They show up early, they work late, which is predominantly true for those of us who serve in the military. But it also did make it difficult being in the civilian sector because we would be given a task or a mission or a purpose on the job site, and not everybody had that value. And that was very, very frustrating. Matter of fact, that's stories I tell repeatedly about some of the challenges that I, as a veteran, came out, is that to transition from where everybody, even if you don't like the person, or even the person isn't putting out 100%, they still understand task and purpose. They know why they're there. They're there to get a mission going. And, not everybody in the civilian sector I worked with had that same value. And it was a bit of a challenge. There was certain times where things were going very badly in having to deal with some of my coworkers that, well, if I would have not taken a step back, could have got myself in trouble.
Is there anything that you feel like you may have left out that you'd like to share during this interview?
Well, I think one of the things is, I think everybody who wants to join the military should be able to. I think it's a shame that in today's military, they end up, if you don't have a high school diploma, they don't take you. There's a lot of people who are really capable, who probably should be joining the Army to grow their future, that aren't allowed to. So I really wish that the military would step away from the whole high school requirement, especially in a time now when they're struggling to recruit, and look at individuals for their capability. In today's Army, I would not have been allowed to join, and I would not have had the blessings that I did from being in the military. And I just wish that the United States Army would go back to the days of when I joined, where healthy, smart, capable is all they wanted.
That's a really good idea. That's something that should be taken into serious consideration. Well, I want to thank you for a great interview, very interesting. And I also want to thank you for your service.